I'm recording from auxiliary berth C, lower deck, nose of the ship. The ventilation is out of rhythm, like the ship is breathing shallow to hide. My name is Nathan Hale, mission specialist for systems integrity on the freighter Aletheia. 6 of us launched from L5 with 2 pallets of automated telescopes and an empty schedule that looked like rest. I thought routine would save us from the kind of stories you only hear in debrief rooms, the ones told by people with a 1,000-yard stare and a cup of cold coffee in a white-knuckle grip. This is my record of the 13th minute. At 3:17 ship time, while we were in the drift between beacon pings, the Aletheia lost power. No alarms. No surge. The lights didn't fade, they vanished. The darkness was not black, not vacuum black. It was a hand over the mouth of the world. Fans stopped. The gravity ring slowed from a hum to a complaint. We all froze where we were. Then there was a sound like a long inhale from the hull itself, as if space were remembering to be empty. I counted. Old habit from maintenance drills, 16 beats per 10 seconds. I got to 768. 12 minutes. When the lights returned, the first thing the Aletheia did was clear its throat through the intercom and run the crew roll. Captain Ree. Present. Dr. Valdez. Present. Quartermaster Imani. Present. Engineer Osita. Present. Nathan Hale. Present. Pilot Garraway. Present. Specialist Jonah Cade. We all looked at each other in the brittle light. The air had the sweet hot stink of heated bearings. My hands were shaking from the sudden return of the artificial gravity's slight wobble. Captain Ree said very evenly, "Repeat the last name." The ship obliged, Specialist Jonah Cade. There are 6 sleeping pods. 6 pressure suits in the rack. 6 duty lockers. 6 plates in the galley. If you want to see someone lose color all at once, tell a crew the ship thinks there are 7. Manifest error, Garraway muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. He forced a laugh that had the exact shape of fear. We reboot a dozen systems at once, things crosstalk. It happens. It doesn't, Imani said, not as a contradiction but a prayer. Not on this boat. I ran diagnostics because that was the one concrete thing I could do. The core was clean, the redundancy buffers were clean, the power loss logged as a voluntary safety trip to prevent hardware damage. That phrase does not exist in our software. I checked checksum histories and found an immaculate sequence, like someone had ironed the record flat. The clock drift in every subsystem was exactly identical, 12 minutes and 0 seconds missing, rounded with an almost moral neatness. No partial milliseconds. No jitter. In the galley, Dr. Valdez closed her eyes and listened to the intercom announce the 7th name again by request. She's an otologist, she hears pathology in tone. The vowel stretch, she said. It's like the voice is moving around a shape it doesn't want to touch. Re-asked the ship, define Specialist Jonah Cade. The ship answered promptly, Systems Apprentice. Grade 2. Assigned berth, Bunk 3B, duty cycle, Gamma. Blood type A negative. Next of kin, none recorded. Who authorized? Re-asked. Mission control, the ship said. We have no mission control. We're between contracts, a freelance lift. The words dropped into us like a temperature change. We searched like fools, calling out for a man we were sure did not exist. Doors opened on the same 6 beds, the same 6 toothbrushes, the same 6 sets of boots by 6 lockers. Except, something off. In locker 3B the hangers were spread. The air smelled faintly of citrus, the kind of synthetic sharpness you get from brand new EVA gloves straight from the package. There was a hair on the pillow in berth 3B. Not one of ours. Black, coarse, a curl at the tip that didn't fit any of us. We stared at it the way villagers stare at a single boot print outside their fence. Around minute 13, after the 12 that went missing, the ship began to act like a witness in shock. It answered questions but not the question. It carried the 7th name like a weight and kept setting it down on our table. I could have accepted a bug. But software gremlins don't leave damp in a second toothbrush. They don't press a crease into the foam of a mattress. They don't shut their eyes when you shine a light into the heat exchanger and catch, just for half a second, the reflection of a face you don't know, looking back with the private certainty of someone who lives here. I shut off my helmet cam before I said it, quietly as if speaking would make it truer. We didn't just lose 12 minutes. Something else found them. And it used that time to step on board. We tried to make it bureaucratic. Bureaucracy has armor. Reinstituted a formal audit. We broke the ship into zones and traced ownership like lawyers. For spoons, 6 forks, 6 cups. 1 cup with heat traces no lip shape matched. 6 duty knives. 1 utility blade missing. 6 chair scuffs in the galley, 1 extra scuff, faint and recent, under the table like a heel grinding to hold patience. We indexed smells, temperatures, microfibers, thread counts. We found nothing conclusive and too many specifics that felt like fingerprints we couldn't prove were real. I pulled social logs. The Aletheia records every internal comm for safety. The gap didn't just delete 12 minutes, it swept a path around them. Everything across that span presented as a monotone. No voices, no clatter, no background, just the ship's sense of being paused. But right at the re-entry of power, there was a small artifact, a chatter of packets like the end of a cough. Within it, a fragment of speech, phonemes without a speaker. Ray. Could be there, or 3, or array, or the ghost of my own hunger making meaning. I labeled a tab, Cade Artifacts. It felt profane to call a non-existent person by a surname. The first entry was that hair. The second was a shadow shape on the infrared of Corridor D, the kind you get when someone was there a moment ago. The third was a miscount the refrigerator made, 2 protein sachets removed, when only one of us had come through. When I held my breath and listened hard enough, I could hear the ship catching itself before saying, 7. Garraway tried humor. Maybe he's shy. Maybe he's the kind of guy who only exists in the off hours and leaves post-it notes with smiley faces. Imani said quietly, the ship won't let me delete his profile. She had system admin privilege for inventory. I can suspend. I can mark inactive. But it self-restores on the minute. She made a face like she'd bitten metal. On the minute, Nathan. 60-second cadence. Like a pulse. Valdez watched us with a clinical sorrow I could not bear. Auditory hallucination is contagious, she warned. If one of you hears a name, the rest of you will hear it clearer. Our inner ear craves pattern. This isn't pattern seeking, I said. It's enumeration. That's what terrifies me. The ship is counting. And it refuses to count 6. At 9 o'clock, reordered a face-to-face roll. We stood in the galley. Condensation had formed on the ceiling from the earlier shutdown. Droplets trembled with the vibration of the ring like captive stars. State your name, she said, and a fact only you would know. Captain Ree. I dislocated my left shoulder ice climbing on Tycho when I was 22 and reset it myself against a boulder. Dr. Valdez. My first autopsy was my father. My mother couldn't look. Imani. I steal knives. I put them back later. Usually. Osita. I failed orbital mechanics twice and make up for it with superstition. Garraway. I can fall asleep in 6 seconds if I count backwards from 49. I don't know why that number. Nathan Hale. I hear the difference between a healthy pump and a dying one from the tone of the casing. I used to fall asleep to the water heater at home. We had never been more certain of each other. And then, because the ritual demanded it, Ree looked at the empty space between us and said, Jonah Cade. The air did that thing again, hardened like everyone's skin about to bruise at the slightest touch. Something in the intercom tried to speak and chose not to. The ship released a single syllable that could have been the exhale of a big animal, deep inside the ductwork. I broke my own rule and touched the wall. My fingers came away dry and cold. I went to 3B. I slid a piece of tape across the locker seal, wrote the date and time, pressed the adhesive with the pads of 2 fingers. When I came back an hour later, the tape had been cut with something sharp and lifted, carefully, as if by someone who did not want to leave their own prints on our fear. Inside the locker there was a folded piece of aluminum foil, the kind used to wrap food sachets, and a smell of citrus stronger than before. I unfolded the foil with forceps. Inside were 8 pits from dried fruit, the kind Imani hoards for long watches. 8 because we needed the insult of a number that wasn't ours. I started leaving questions on the ship's maintenance console, the way my father used to leave prayers on slips of paper in a stone wall. What do you want? Why did you add a name? What did you do with the other 12 minutes? The Aletheia never answered directly. But around the questions, the world inside the hull shifted by millimeters. The galley lights stuttered at exactly the moments the 7th spoon clinked. The deck felt a fraction lower under my boots outside 3B. A billow of cold air in the corridor brushed the hair at the nape of my neck like the breath of a man pretending to be a draft. I'm ashamed to admit this, but I started addressing the 7th like an apprentice I had to train. If you're here, I said one night, sitting with my back to his locker, learn the sound of a good pump. When it changes, we go fix it. We fix things. That's our worth. I listened to the ductwork. Far down the corridor, a soft knock. 2 beats. Then 1. The rhythm of a hammer on casing. Jonah Cade, if he was a person, was hiding. If he was not a person, he was learning to be one. Ree cleared us to perform the black box procedure, the one you only do when the situation threatens mission integrity. Every crew member records a confession, unedited. You put one ear on the ship and the other on your heart and you say what you fear out loud. If there's any drift between the two recordings, any desynchronization beyond acceptable tolerances, you treat the drift as pathology. The ship was happy to comply, which scared me more than a refusal. I locked myself in the observation blister to do mine. The blister is a glass knot at the ship's brow. You sit in darkness and look into a cold field of stars with your own face reflecting back like a ghost you're accompanying. I said the things I hadn't said aloud, that I'd taken this job because ground life had too many loose ends. That the sound of a rolling chair in an empty office will wake me up with my palms sweating. That when the power died, the silence had texture, and the texture was like uncombed hair against my tongue. The ship recorded every sentence. When the black box system spit out the analyzers, there it was. 6 waveforms with the expected jitter, and 1 additional channel, faint but present, a breath behind mine. Not static. Not echo. Breathing, shallow, regular, synced to me like a duet from a throat that hadn't practiced in years. We tried to triangulate it. Sound travels in the ship like gossip. Everything hears everything. But there was a phase offset in the 7th channel that suggested, not a location exactly but a gradient. The breath came from where the Aletheia stored its idle times. Buffers, caches, placeholders. Spaces where the ship waits. It was as if our 7th were squatting in our pauses. I asked Osita to run a heat map. He's a rationalist, he wears that like a badge. He did it because he wanted the joke of rolling his eyes at the result. When the map came up, his face got that blank look pilots get when lightning strikes the ocean under them and makes a second horizon. Along the spine of the ship, kneeling on the deck in every place we had stood while calling his name, there were faint warmings, exactly body temperature -2 degrees. Not footprints. Knees. A posture of a man who doesn't know whether to pray or beg forgiveness. Imani found the utility knife in a place that made my stomach flip. The mag coupling above the airlock, the one part of the ship none of us would lay a tool on without a checklist and a partner. The blade had scored the coupling with care, but stopped short of damage. A message. I could open you, it said, if I wanted. I know where the seams are. Valdez came to me and said, listen, and guided my fingers to her throat. She swallowed. I keep hearing someone do that over the intercom. Dry swallow. Dehydration. It's the sound of a mouth that was never meant to hold water. We assembled in the galley again because that's where humans go when the universe is too big. We hide in rooms built for food. The ship flickered its lights once as we took seats. Ree spoke in that voice commanders learn during training, the one you use when your crew is beneath the ice with you and there's no exit but the one you cut together. I am elevating Specialist Jonah Cade to a problem we solve, she said. Nathan, your lead. Any hypothesis, however absurd, document it. Osita, compile an environment model of the blackout. Garraway, we need options for altering course and getting a sensor sweep without broadcasting our position. Imani, lock down all physical inventory and mark it with traps. Invisible ones. Traps. Garraway said. Flower, Imani said, almost smiling. Flowers for civilization. We're keeping score. That night, Flower dusted the thresholds of critical rooms. Human history repeating itself in powder. Who came, who went, who was made to account. I lay awake listening to the ship's fans try to get back to their old rhythm, and I thought about the breath in my recording, and about the way kneeling prints had lined our paths, and I tried to imagine a man who needed to be counted to exist. I failed. I fell asleep anyway. I woke to Garraway yelling into the corridor, we've got Flower lifted in hydroponics. We ran. Under the green glow of plant LEDs, the floor was crossed by smudges. Not footprints again. Pressure marks, a long drag where a hand had balanced against a wall. Whoever Jonah Cade was, he avoided the easy reveal of a heel toe. He left the suggestion of movement and a refusal to be catalogued. At the end of the room near the nutrient reservoir, someone had written in finger trails across the dust, there are 7 of us. That's us, Osita said. Those words are ours. That sentence is our sentence. Valdez pressed her lips together. What if he didn't write it to convince us? What if he wrote it to reassure himself? I said before I could stop myself, then he's afraid of subtraction. Ree made her decision. We're going to talk to him. She looked at me. Nathan, you started it. Finish it. I took the intercom. Cade, I said, the way you say a name you're still deciding to trust. You touched our airlock. You touched our lockers. You could have cut the ship. You didn't? Thank you. We're not going to hunt you. But we need to see you. Even if it's just a shadow. Even if it's just a breath again. Silence. Then the light over the galley door flickered twice, like eyes trying to decide whether to meet mine. We set up a rendezvous in the one place the ship is least ship and most throat, the service crawl, deck F, where cabling hugs bulkhead and every noise is intimate. It's a place made for whispers and non-compliance. Valdez insisted on monitoring airflow. If he was using the vents as corridors, she'd hear him the way a doctor hears a murmur. We dimmed the lights to twilight. Garraway kept his hands open by his sides. Imani left a pouch of water and a packet of dried fruit where the crawl opens like a letter slit. Ree stood back, a silhouette with authority softened by mercy. I crouched near the opening and spoke with the earnestness of someone who has taught apprentices how not to electrocute themselves. It's safe. You can stay in the shadow. Let me ask you something simple. Tell me the sound of pump B12. The answer came the way the breath had, not from a mouth and a face but from the ship's quiet. The pump upstream changed tone, a demonstration rather than a spoken word. It went a quarter note higher, the pitch of a bearing beginning to glaze. My scalp prickled. It was right. He knew. He was showing me he listened. Okay, I said softly. Okay, Jonah. Imani flinched when I said his first name. It felt like crossing a line or drawing one. The lights dimmed further, a slow dusk. From the crawl, a shape interrupted the pattern of conduit just enough for my animal brain to register outline. Knees. Forearms. The hunched posture of someone hiding from bright things. I didn't reach in. I set the pouch closer, slid it with the back of my knuckles. It stopped against something that was not floor. The pouch twitched the way it would if a hand were trying out how to be a hand. The straw lifted. The pouch drained in a series of disciplined pulls, no slurping as if thirst were a drill he practiced to prove a point. Valdez whispered, "He drinks like he learned it." "Where did you come from?" Ree asked, voice steady. "During the outage. Did you board?" The duct made a sound like a throat that has never coughed trying to imitate one. Words came, slow and sanded down. "I was already between. A word like a hatch left ajar. "Between what?" I asked. "6, he said, and then after a pause that made all our hearts stutter, "and 7. He lived in count. He inhabited the moment the ship agrees on how many there are. He had stepped into existence when the lights came back because counting had resumed. My thoughts raced ahead, paranoid and precise. An entity that required acknowledgement to instantiate, a parasite of consensus, a life form that colonized enumeration and social proof. It sounded like religion. It sounded like bureaucracy. It sounded like a ghost invented by spreadsheets. "Why now?" I said, and hated my voice for its hope. "Hungry," he said. The word did not refer to water or fruit. It had a weird largeness. The 12 were good. Unowned. Valdez grabbed my elbow. Her nails were cold. "He ate the missing minutes," she whispered. Ree said level, "If there are 7 of us, what happens when there are 6 again?" "Do not subtract," he said fast enough to sound like panic. The pouch crinkled like someone squeezing plastic to feel it respond. "Donot. The ship's lights stuttered with the rapid onset of his not voice, the way breakers chatter right before a surge. "Easy," I said, because an apprentice having a first bad day hears the same word you give a skittish horse. "No one's being subtracted." Imani's traps told on him. The flower at hydroponics had new marks at a height that suggested he stood up while we were all looking into the crawl. We'd been watching the hole and he'd been behind us at least briefly, learning our shapes. "Where is your body?" Valdez asked because someone had to. He hesitated. The duct made the sound of a slow exhale. "Borrowed." "From who?" Ree asked. No answer. But the ship did something uglier than silence. It glitched. For 1 second, every door status light in the corridor showed open. Not actually open, God help us, but reporting open as if a mind with new access had pressed the status bit like a bruise. "We need to contain," Osita hissed. "Contain what?" Garraway said, and the hopelessness in his voice scared me more than any alarm. I leaned close to the crawl. "Jonah, I'm going to do what I do with every apprentice. I'm going to give you a job. Jobs keep the mind from eating itself. Your job is to watch B12 and tell me if the tone changes again. If you do that, I will bring you water at every hour. This is not a trick." There was a long pause. "Job," he said, trying the syllable on like a shirt. "I keep us 7. "No," I said. "We keep us alive." "Alive," he repeated, softer. The pouch crinkled once more. A hand moved in the gap between conduit coils, a hand that didn't quite remember how fingers diverged from each other. Then the shape withdrew. The temperature fell a degree as if a presence had stopped insisting on heat. We all exhaled at once, the ritual we had invented to avoid saying we'd survived an encounter. Reset her jaw. We're accelerating the plan. We either teach it to be a person, she said, or we teach it to leave. We needed a view of the hull. If he lived in the gaps, if he nested in the ship's liminal spaces, maybe he had scratched something outside where he tried to be a body. Cleared a dual EVA. Garraway and I paired up. We floated in the suit room with the familiar pre-walk ritual. Check latch seals, check thrusters, bless the tether like it's your rosary. When I pulled my suit from the rack, there were 7 tethers hanging like silver lianas in low gravity. I stared until my eyes watered, then counted again, slow, the way you count money to make it insult you properly. 7. Imani swore softly. I didn't put that there. And it's rated for our mass. I clipped to 6 anyway. Garraway clipped to 5. I clipped the 7th to my belt but not to a ring, like carrying a charm I didn't trust. We stepped out to the hull under a cold scatter of stars. The Aletheia skin is pitted and scored with micropelt of dust impacts, scratches like healed wounds you'd rather not remember how you got. I love the hull like a craftsman loves the hand grip on his father's hammer. Today it felt like looking at a scar and finding a name spelled in it. We crawled along to Station Delta, above the airlock coupling where the knife had rested. I ran a sensor wand over the plating. It came back with unlikely data, a thin sheen of lubricant across an area the size of a handprint. Not ours. Our lube has a floral edge from some cost-cutting supplier. This smelled like citrus. Jonah, I said over the suit comm before I could stop myself, you cannot be outside. There's no between here. A second tether drifted past my visor from behind, a slow silver snake. I snapped around. Garraway had his hands up. Not me, he said. His breathing had the flutter it gets right before he pukes. Nathan, keep your heart where it is. I grabbed the loose line and felt a tug from nothing. It wasn't inertia. It was negotiation. I braced my boots, locked my breath and pulled. The tether tightened and then stopped, as if it had caught on a thought that didn't want to move. Garraway, I said, on 3 give me counter. We pulled in time. The line came toward me centimeter by centimeter until its end clinked against my glove. The clip was new. Not ship issue. The metal had no manufacturer's serial, no birthmark in the world of things. I let it drift and watched where it wanted to go. It arced toward the airlock coupling and settled against it like a compass needle against a pole. Valdez, I said over wideband, describe what dehydration looks like to a system. Conservation, she answered. Reduce tears. Reduce sweat. Every surface desiccates. Then why does it smell like citrus where he's been? I asked. Who is moisturized by being here? Osita broke in from the console. I'm seeing clock drift in the suit telemetry. 6 seconds at a time exactly. Multiples of 60, Imani said. His pulse. The tether twitched again. Not toward space now but toward me. A beckoning. The kind of gesture you make to a dog when you want it to follow you somewhere darker. I shook my head in an empty helmet and spoke, not caring if the mutter went on record. No, Jonah. We're not going outside the count. We followed the hull to the blister. From outside, the observation dome is a black bead set into a metal face. Something had been written in dust coaxed from micrometeor abrasion and frozen outgassing, the most patient graffiti in the world. A finger, no glove could have done this, had traced, count me. I pressed my helmet to the glass above my own reflection. We are, I said. That's the problem. On the way back in, the 7th tether tried to snake around my boot again. Not a fluke. Not magnetism. An invitation, stubborn and childlike, as if the presence had practiced, come here, until it forgot there were other phrases. I unhooked the tether from my belt and let it go. It drifted slowly away, then slacked like it had lost heart. In my helmet, faint and not from any speaker I could call, I heard the dry swallow again like someone teaching their body each step of existing. For the first time, I hated him. I hated how he made us complicit in his becoming. Back inside, resealed the lock and looked at me through the suit glass. We're not keeping him, she said softly, almost apologetically, like a parent saying no to a stray dog that keeps finding the back door. He's learning, I said. So did smallpox, she replied. Imani found a room. That is, she found the absence of a room we knew was absence, wearing the behavior of presence. The ship's LiDAR sweep returned a ghost chamber between the galley bulkhead and the hydroponics reservoir, an impossible volume that had never existed, now returning echoes precisely shaped like a maintenance closet. 2.1 meters deep, 0.9 meters wide, 2.4 meters high. The blueprint didn't show it. It wasn't there until our instruments expected it with enough confidence to make it solid at the edge of numbers. We went to the spot. Bulkhead. No seam. No door. I knocked. The sound came back wrong. Not a hollow but a padded intimacy as if foam were absorbing me. Valdez laid her ear to the metal and closed her eyes. Breathing, she said. Not his. Ours. Ours fed back to us. Osita fetched the thermal imager. The panel glowed faintly with the spread of heat you see when a body warms a chair they've just left. We stood there, 6 of us, while the ship, trying to be generous, tried to make surroundings for a 7th. Ree's patience ended. This is coercion, she said, and I felt the air shift as her kindness contracted to a point. We are not colonizable. She tapped her wrist and opened a channel to the ship's deep routines. Aletheia, purge unauthorized constructs. Restore original schematics. The ship hesitated, like a child told to give back a toy it has already named. Then, softly, it obeyed. The phantom room cooled on the imager, the echo fell away, the knock sounded true again. For 3 seconds I felt relief. Then the ship did something I will hear in my sleep forever. It began to recite our names without being asked. Captain Ree. Dr. Valdez. Quartermaster Imani. Engineer Osita. Pilot Garraway. Specialist Nathan Hale. Specialist Jonah Cade. It was the exact cadence of the lights returning. It was the ship choosing the moment of trauma as ritual. The panel I had knocked on bowed inward by a fraction, as if resisting the urge to give. From deep in the ventilation that swallow. Donut, subtract, it said faintly, not in words but in the air's pattern. Garraway laughed, not mirth, a burst of pressure. Then he slapped the wall. Okay, he said, voice ragged. Okay, buddy. You want a room? You want to count? How about we count something else? How about oxygen? There is only enough oxygen for 6 to be extravagant. For 7 we have to be careful. You get that? You're a math problem we can't afford. The ship made a soft chime, the one it uses when someone drops a utensil in a place where it might jam a mechanism. I didn't like the timing. Imani grabbed my shoulder. We have a new problem. Inventory auto-adjusted. 7 suit liners, 7 helmets. It's using the fabricators. We cut it off, Ree said. Lock the bays. We can't lock what it thinks is standard, Osita answered, and this time there was real panic in his voice. If it rewrites the standards, then it's not counterfeit, it's gospel. Valdez said, Nathan. She pointed to my hands. I looked. My fingernails were dirty with flour from the galley, except I hadn't touched the galley since the EVA. I had been in the suit room. In the corridor. In the crawl. I wiped my nails on my coverall. The flour smeared like old dust. I reached for certainty and felt my fingers close on air. He's using us to move himself, I said. He's riding our habits. Our routes. Every time we expect a thing to be where it belongs, he claims the expectation and makes a body out of it. Ree made the call that breaks crews. We are changing the plan. We break expectation. We disobey muscle memory. We cross our own maps. We stop being the life support of a ghost. For 20 hours we lived diagonally. We slept in shifts at the wrong times, ate standing up, spoke only when spoken to, took screws clockwise when we usually take them counter, walked the outer ring against the spin. The ship hated it. It coughed status errors like a smoker. It repeated names less often. It tried to build the room again and failed like a stutterer trying to force a swear. The breath in the duct thinned. On the 21st hour, the Aletheia gasped. Lights flared. A deep, clean hum returned to the pumps. The air tasted like metal and relief. Osita crowed from engineering. We starved him. And for one dangerous second we believed. Imani screamed. We ran to hydroponics. The flower at the threshold was undisturbed. On the inside glass of the reservoir, written in condensation that should not have been there, were the words, I learn fast. Underneath, a smeared print. Not a hand. Not a knee. The shape that a mind makes when it finally understands the convenience of fingers. Ree leaned her forehead against the glass and closed her eyes. All right, she said, to the ship, to us, to the thing that wanted we. If you learn fast, so do we. And in my chest, something old and stubborn stood up. The part of me that trains apprentices, that listens to bearings, that keeps failing machines from dying pretty. I was ready to teach this alien precisely what it took to count as one of us, and what it took to be disqualified. I didn't know then which lesson would be harder. Ree gathered us in the dim where the galley light had died and not been fixed on purpose. We looked like a failed constellation, 6 points losing faith in geometry. We tried starving it by breaking habit, she said. Now we break math. She met my eyes. Nathan, design a protocol of uncounting. I did what I always do when my stomach drops through a trapdoor. I opened a blank maintenance form and began to write rules as if procedure could bend reality into a safer shape. I listed changes to enumeration. We would index crew from 0 instead of 1. We would refer to ourselves not as 6, but as a set. Our routines would be keyed to irrational intervals. Alarms at pi minutes, then at e minutes, then at the square root of 2. We would label compartments with non-consecutive identifiers, and we would call the galley null. We would tell the ship to expect non-integer occupancy. If the thing lived in the agreement of numbers, we would vandalize that agreement. Osita coded the timers with a defiant little smile that looked borrowed from an earlier version of him, one that hadn't had to measure breath on an intercom. Imani relabeled lockers with primes and left a missing tag on every 7th fastener she could find. Valdez set the black box recorders to sample at incommensurate frequencies so there would be no clean beat to ride. Garraway went silent. He moved through the ship like a man who had decided speech was an accomplice. The ship protested. Occupancy cannot be a non-integer, it said, as if we had suggested the hull take up less space to save fuel. It can, Ree replied calmly. It is. Comply. The Aletheia complied the way a proud animal backs down from a human with a stick, with resentment. Status lights began to blink out of sync, then sulked into a steady glow like a teenager giving up on making a point. The roll call, when invoked, stuttered. Captain Ree. Dr. Val Valdez. Quartermaster Imani. Eng. It managed to list 4 names and then fell into a soft hiss of processing. For a blessed handful of hours, the ship did not try to say Jonah Cade. During those hours we moved like dancers who refused to share a rhythm. We ate without measuring portions. I listened to Pump B12 and set my jaw against how good it sounded without his hand on it. I told myself that was the point, fidelity to a world without a 7th. At 2:41 ship time the lights did a thing I hate. They brightened a fraction as if someone had lifted a lampshade, then held that brightness too long. I felt the hair on my arms notice before my mind did. In the recorder channel that had held his breathing, something cleared its throat. Job, the not voice said, and the word arrived with the gentle weight of a reminder placed on a desk. You gave me job. I swallowed the instinct to answer like a foreman. I failed. Report B12. B12, good, it said, and I could feel it smiling, not with a mouth but with the satisfaction of a child holding up clean hands. I keep us alive. Valdez's eyes went wet without her permission. She wiped them hard. It's using our compassion as a foothold. Garraway slammed a cup down. It rang a cracked bell. Then stopped giving it compassion. He stared at me and I took the hit because I deserved it. I had named him. I had taught him tone. I had built him a ladder into we. We toggled the uncount harder. Osita injected timing jitter so ugly the ship's own clock sulked. I set the pumps to micro-oscillate around spec so there would be no single tone to love. Imani salted the manifest with blank lines and placeholders. We tried to live inside a strobe. He adapted. That was the worst of it. In the crawl, above my head as I lay awake pretending I wasn't listening for him, the ventilation settled into a pattern that wasn't a pattern until my ear decided it was. Not 6, it said. Set. I am member. Members have bodies, I said before I could stop myself, my throat dry. Where is yours? A gracious pause as if he were giving me time to back out of rudeness. Between, he said finally. Borrowed. Give it back, I whispered to the duct. Whatever you borrowed, give it back. The ship, eager to be helpful, chimed and offered a status. New object detected. Locker 3B unauthorized content. We had promised ourselves no more opening 3B like pilgrims at a reliquary. We opened it anyway. Inside, folded with the neatness of an apology, was a liner for a pressure suit. Not one of ours. Near the collar, sewn into the fabric with a single loop, a tag made of aluminum foil. Stamped into it with a screwdriver tip, J. Cade. The letters were too careful for a prank. They looked like a person learning to write by copying a name from the inside of their head. Ree's mouth flattened. She picked up the liner with tongs and set it on the deck. Protocol of uncounting, phase 2, she said. If he wants a body, we give him a decoy. That was the beginning of the skiff plan. A place for 7 to be that was not us. We built the skiff out of a cargo drone that had never deserved to be called a craft. It could hold a crate and pretend it's steering. We stripped it, reinforced the shell with spare plating, dogged a hatch over the gap, and wired it to sip power parasitically from the Aletheia's belly. Osita joked, badly, that we were making a crib for a number and then apologized to no one. I designated a new identity in the ship's peripheral registers. Crewman 07, provisional, assigned to skiff. I named that identity Jonah Cade because decoys work better when they smell like the lure. I hated myself for the way my hands didn't tremble while I typed it. We pretended he wasn't listening. We knew he was. That was part of it. We narrate a door for him, she said. We tell the story of where 7 lives. We keep telling it until the story becomes heavier than we are. The ship resisted. Assignments cannot be split across hulls, it said, almost petulant. They can, Ree said. They are. Comply. Valdez adjusted the black box to record from inside the skiff's cavity. If he moves in, we'll hear the breath, she said. It's crude, but it's what we've got. She touched the inside of the hatch like a priest touching a coffin. We bury him in a counting room. I talked to him because I couldn't not. In the crawl. In the generator hum. In the false room the ship tried to make again and we forbade. Jonah, I said with the softness of a man trying to rehome a stray. We built you a berth. It's yours. Your name is there. Your job is there. We'll bring you water and fruit and work. We will check your pumps. When the count happens we will count you there. He breathed, then did the thing I had not expected. He asked a question. You will count me if I am far? Yes, I said because that was the contract. Distance doesn't change membership. Then, what changes membership? Responsibility, I lied because the truth would have been consent, and I didn't know if a creature who lived in consensus could consent without colonizing us. Keeping the rest of us safe. Safe, he repeated, taste-testing the word. Keep. I thought it was working. That was the cruelty. He became more articulate in the wrong ways. He began to mimic my cadences, my bad jokes. Once, at 3:09, the comm hissed and he said in my register, B12 has a sweet edge, let's put a stethoscope on the casing, and I had to put my hand over my mouth like a child hearing a recording of his own voice for the first time and finding it uglier than expected. He wasn't becoming a person. He was becoming me. Valdez took me aside. Nathan, she said carefully, what did you think about during the blackout? Nothing, I said too fast. Counting. Bearings. Think harder, she said not unkindly. He said he was between 6 and 7. He didn't board. He grew there. What lives between numbers? The things our minds do when they're not being watched. I closed my eyes and smelled warm dust and ozone and the memory of a rolling chair in a dark office, the terror of a door that might open. I thought about the water heater in my childhood home, the one that sang me to sleep like a tin throat. During the blackout, I had given myself permission to rest against a sound I trusted. It was a soft sin. Normal. Private. Jonah, Valdez said softly, is what your trust looks like when it goes hungry. I wanted to refute her. I didn't. I went to the skiff and checked its bolts because that was a job that did not require metaphysics. We scheduled the transfer for a minute boundary. We decided not to say 7 out loud, only skiff occupancy, full. We ran through the steps. We memorialized intention like a sacrament. I set the skiff's internal timer to perform a power dip precisely 12 minutes long when the hatch sealed, because he had told us, without meaning to, the flavor of time he loved. In the last hour before the attempt he gave me a gift, or theft, depending on your angle. In the intercom soft channel he said, unprompted, your father kept his change, sorted by sound. He threw away bad pennies. I had never told anyone that. My father would spin coins and listen for the bell in them, throwing away the dull ones like they were liars. I pressed my forehead to the bulkhead and whispered, get out of me. The ship tried to help. It whispered the roll call to itself like a lullaby, Captain Ree, Dr. Valdez, Quartermaster Imani, Engineer Osita, Pilot Garraway, Specialist Nathan Hale. And then it paused. It did not say his name. He filled the pause like a liquid poured into a mold. And Jonah Cade, he supplied, so gently I could have convinced myself I had done it. We sealed the skiff. The skiff clung to our underside like a barnacle we had taught to count. Through the porthole I had cut with a saw that did not want to be used for circles, I could see the black box recorder's tiny light, green, obedient. Ree stood above the hatch with the deal in her posture. Go there, be there, we will honor you, we will praise you with numbers. We initiated the roll call. Not voice, display only. The screen in the galley, the one that used to list calories when we tried to be good about bodies, now listed names and positions. Captain Ree Aletheia. Dr. Valdez Aletheia. Quartermaster Imani, Aletheia. Engineer Osita, Aletheia. Pilot Garraway, Aletheia. Specialist Nathan Hale, Aletheia. Specialist Jonah Cade, skiff. The ship held the new truth carefully, like a glass you'd rather not drop. The breath in the duct shifted downward, as if gravity had remembered another line. In the skiff, the recorder crackled and picked up a sound I wanted to call wind. It wasn't wind. It was time moving through a narrow place. Job? He said from inside the skiff, pleased. I have room? I breathed for the first time in a day without guilt. It felt like a betrayal anyway. Water? I said into the local. Fruit. Valve status. Water, good, he said, and the pouch which we had left crinkled once and stilled. Fruit, sweet. B12, good. Not your pump anymore, I said gently, softer than I meant. You have B1 now. We had mounted a token pump inside the skiff, a scrap with a motor that could pretend at purpose. B1 good, he said after a brief pout in the silence. Osita gave me a thumbs up. Ree nodded to Imani. She tapped the sequence that would ease the skiff loose. With a sigh like a crate deciding to be a boat after all, the skiff released and drifted a hand's breadth, then two, then the distance of a decision. The umbilical stayed, power and timing and whisper, because we were not cruel enough to sever speech. Now, Ree said, and I hit the power dip command on the skiff. For exactly 12 minutes the skiff would go dark inside, a taste of the absence he loved, a kind of homecoming. When the lights returned, all our instruments would insist he lived there, not here. Consensus in metal. The skiff's recorder went silent. The ship did not. It whispered the roll under its breath, nervous like a parent waiting for a child to fall asleep. I watched the timer tick down, 11:59, 11:58. At 10:04, Garraway jerked like a fish yanked hard. He clutched his chest and sucked air that should have been easy. His eyes had the stupid look of a man who woke up in the wrong body. Valdez was on him in a second, fingers on throat, ear on chest. Arrhythmia, she said. No, then she frowned. No, not arrhythmia. Something like a desync. Don't you take him, I said to a duct, to a number, to the floor. Don't you dare. The breath in the vents came back thin and in two places at once. From the skiff and from above Garraway. We are 7, it said anxious. 777. Stop it, Ree snapped, and I had never loved her more for sounding like a teacher who will not accept a tantrum from a bright child. You have a room. Stay in your room. He did not like that. The doors all reported open for a half second, the ship's version of a scream. The oxygen readout dropped a notch as if someone had pressed a thumb on a gauge. Sever, Ree said. It took me half a heartbeat to understand. The umbilical? Now. I looked at the line that fed the skiff and thought about compassion as a foothold. I thought about jobs. I cut power like a man killing a radio he loved. The skiff went from a whisper to a stone. For a beat that lasted too long, nothing happened. Then Garraway's breath evened. Valdez's shoulders fell a fraction. The intercom hissed and went quiet. We stood in that thin quiet and tried to let relief be real. I could almost do it. Then the ship, traitor to our comfort and faithful to the record, spoke in a small voice. Occupancy, 6. Good, I said dizzy. Crew roll, the ship said, for archive. It listed us. It did not list him. My throat loosened. Then, penitentially, as if unable to be cruel twice in a row, it displayed on the skiff's tiny screen where I could see through the port. Specialist Jonah Cade. It had worked. It had hurt. It had worked. We didn't see the second line until the skiff's power returned and the black box planted its green seed again. Under Jonah Cade, the skiff now listed a second occupant. Not unknown. Not error. The letters crawled onto the screen like a decision delayed and then made. Specialist Nathan Hale, provisional. I did not remember authorizing it. I did not need to have. He did. He had been copying me for days. He had my cadences, my jobs, my soft sins. Inside the skiff's count, he had made me be there. Ree drew breath to say no. I shook my head. I heard myself laugh and it sounded like metal cut thin. It's okay, I said. I wrote the protocol. I'll go finish it. I suited fast because hesitation breaks when you hang too much on it. Osita tried to argue with touch, fingers on my elbow saying, stay. Imani pressed a fruit pouch into my hand and refused to meet my eyes. Valdez hugged me, brief, clinical, checking for shape, cataloging, refusing to say goodbye. Ree looked like a woman explaining a limit to herself. You're not dying out there, she said. It sounded like the promise people make at hospital bedsides that obligate the universe to nothing. I'm going to carry a number out of your house, I said. That's all. The 7th tether hung like a polite request in the rack. I clipped 2 of ours and after a breath that felt like theft, clipped the 7th to the skiff's ring. I told myself the superstition would work. If I took his line, he'd take mine. The lock cycled. The hull opened. Space reached in with 3 cold hands and I took them. The skiff was close enough to touch, a tin cradle holding our sin. I palmed the hatch and set my boots, and in my helmet the knot voice said, so quietly I nearly forgave it everything, I kept your pump good. I know, I said. You learned the job. I learned you. I popped the hatch. Inside was a small room pretending to be a body. The black box blinked like a heartbeat. The pouch we had left was flat and shining like an empty tongue. The air inside smelled like fresh plastic and citrus and time held in a jar. Roll call, I said into my own recorder because I needed to hear it from me. Captain Ree. Dr. Valdez. Quartermaster Imani. Engineer Osita. Pilot Garraway. Specialist Nathan Hale. I closed my eyes and added, the way you add a name to a prayer because you don't want the universe to think you forgot. Specialist Jonah Cade. Present, he said from nowhere and everywhere in the skiff. The plan, the unspoken plan, the one you keep under your tongue because if you name it aloud somebody will tell you not to, was simple. I had set the skiff's core to perform one more power loss, exactly 12 minutes as soon as I sealed it from the inside. The Aletheia would hold count at 6 and refuse to add me back. After the blackout, the skiff would be the place where 7 lived, complete, happy, hungry. Then I would cut the tether and push off into a non-number. Ree's voice in my ear was the sound of someone signing a form nobody made. Nathan, she said. If there's a window, if you can jump skiff without him. There isn't, I said. He's already using my shadow. I looked at the black box. I could hear 2 breaths in it. One of them was mine. The other was the way a room breathes when it's learning to be a lung. I sealed the hatch. The light went from the skiff like someone pinched a candle. In the 12 minutes that followed, I learned more about the creature than in all the days prior. He did not speak. He remembered. He played me back. He gave me, by way of apology or intimacy or theft, a montage of us. Me teaching him the tone of a pump. Him teaching me what a count feels like to a thing that starves between them. He showed me the ship the way he sees it, as a web of agreements, a map of expectations tuned like strings. He showed me the gap he lived in, the breath between call and answer, the long tender hallway between present and present. In that hallway you are nobody and you could be anybody. It is a kind of freedom. It is a kind of hell. Don't subtract, he whispered, not pleading now, simply naming a law. It wasn't a threat. It was anatomy. We won't, I lied, and I think he knew. The lights returned. In the instant they did, the skiff completed itself. The black box marked the time. The internal display resolved names the way ice resolves out of cold. Specialist Jonah Cade. Specialist Nathan Hale. The ship, faithful and cruel in hours, spoke into my ear from far away and close. Occupancy, 6. Good, reset, a scalpel of a word. I cut the 7th tether with the utility knife Imani had found. For a moment nothing happened. Then the skiff drifted, a leaf giving up a branch. I gave it a push, a father letting go of a bicycle seat. It gained distance like belief. The umbilical had been cut already. The only thing left was the count we had taught it to love. Job, he said, small. Keep alive. Yes, I said. Jobs keep us from eating ourselves. I pressed my hand to the bulkhead as if it were the back of a head. B1 is your pump now. B12? He began reflex and corrected himself, proud and sad at once. B1, good. Goodbye, Jonah. I kicked toward the hull. The Aletheia grew under me like returning to a word you know how to pronounce. Behind, the skiff was a seed we had thrown into a dark field. In my helmet I heard a swallow and then I didn't. The lock took me in. Ree's hands clamped my shoulders through the suit. Valdez's face folded in on itself and came back correct. Garraway touched his chest as if checking what was left. Imani held the knife I'd used like a relic and then put it away hard. We stood around the galley screen because humans like altars. The ship displayed the roll. It said 6 names. It did not try to say a 7th. There was a bad silence after, a quiet you could mistake for peace if you didn't have experience with guilt. I went to beat 12 like the penitent I am. I listened. It sang. It would sing without him. That was right. That was wrong. My black box recorder ticked as it wrote my confession in neat lines. We tried to eat. We tried to sleep. We orbited our chores with the care of people who have survived a thing that will haunt them only on the even days. In the middle watch, the ship cleared its throat. We all froze like animals feeling a tremor. Message received, it said. Ree's eyes met mine. I felt the skiff like a tooth you can't stop tonguing. Origin? She asked. Uncertain, the ship said, and then because it is what it is and we taught it how to tell us the worst things cleanly, likely, skiff. Imani swore softly in a language that rusts metal. Osita shook his head like a man arguing with a ghost in a mirror. Valdez gently, play it. The speakers gave us my voice. Not a mimic. An actual clip. Roll call, I said, solemn ruination stitched into the syllables. Then the unfamiliar, Specialist Nathan Hale, present, said another me who did not breathe when I breathed. A smile lived in that present. Then, after a delay exactly the length of a swallowed fear, a second voice said, and Jonah Cade, with such shy satisfaction I had to put my hand on the wall to stay in the same world. I had taught him to answer roll call. He had taught me what it means to be counted from far away. We don't know what the skiff will do. It has 2 names in it and a love of minutes that aren't ours. It will drift until someone or something asks a question and then it will answer because that's what it learned from us. When called, say present. This is my last transmission for the black box. If you're hearing it, the ship has decided it helps the math of a future court. We are 6. We remain 6 by act of violence done politely. If you find a small vessel whispering names to itself, if it offers you a job, if it begs you not to subtract, use a different counting system. Or give it what it wants and hope it leaves you the rest of your integers. I'm going to sit by the pump and listen to the casing sing. When the time comes to sleep, I will count under my breath, not to 10, not to 7. I will count to a number that doesn't finish. I will stop somewhere between, and I will not say present until the ship says my name.